So here's what we're going to do today. You're going to see us for up until lunch. We're going to cover the general ledger. Then Dan Farruggio is going to handle the supply chain piece. We're going to come back and do payables, project ledger, and asset accounting. Why are we doing it in that order, you ask? That's right. I wanted to tell a story and to better illustrate the feature functionality. So I told my team, why don't we come up with a new service line, urgent care, and we're going to build out an urgent care center. And through the process of that, we'll set up a project to track all our capital costs. We have been funded by a grant from State of Colorado Public Health, and you are kicking in a portion of that too. So I'm going to be able to show you how to collect costs in a project, but also bill those out to your external sponsor. I'm hyperventilating.
Yeah. No. So we're really excited about this. I think hopefully today the scenario will illustrate how CloudSuite is the platform for growth. We've been working in Lawson a long time. I had the pleasure of coming out to Lenexa, Kansas 15 years ago and helping build out the AP Shared Services Center, setting up ImageNow, and helping roll out Lawson. As a Lawson consultant, I feel like this is the best time to work in our industry because there is so much rapid advancement of the system, that we get to implement. So today you'll see all consultants. None of us are salespeople. We're all actual consultants. You'll see us walking through CloudSuite, basically using some of the experience that we have on CloudSuite implementations that we've done and that we have going on for other healthcare organizations. And the story that we've laid out today is SCL has decided to branch out into a new service line, new line of business, and that is urgent care centers. And we're building our first urgent care center right here in the Denver area with plans to build many more. So we'll be walking through a set of transactions that would actually occur as part of this overall initiative, and we'll be walking through them in essentially chronological order. Right. So what you'll see along the way is different consultants of our team coming up to present, switching out roles because we're emulating a diverse set of SCL employees across HCM, across supply chain, across finance. So right. We'll be switching in, and we'll let you know as we work through those sort of different roles that all come together to make these business transactions work.
So it starts with a foundational structure, our general ledger, our project structure, and then we have our foundation, just like you do today using Lawson terms. When you set up a capital project today, you have an accounting unit, you have an account, you have a project or an activity, and account categories, and you produce a budget. So we're doing something similar in Infor. Some of the differences to that, though, is that we are going to use functionality that you don't currently use, in that when you have an external funding source in terms of a grant, we can walk through how that works. And so you can, and I know you have grants here, I know you don't have grant management, but you do some of these same things that we're going to show you today, but now you're going to be able to see them consolidated into one place in an integrated solution. Richard was saying he went back, 15 years ago. I came to thank you, in 2001 and helped do the first implementation of Lawson way back in version 801. So you have me to blame for company 1864, I think. So if you don't like it, I'm sorry. It was well-intentioned. I said, you know, everybody does company one or everybody does company 1,000. Let's do something that's is significant to you. So, and I'm a history buff, and here we are with 1864. That doesn't exactly work going forward. It works great in a single company structure. That's kind of how we came up with that idea. But what we're going to walk you through is maybe a new solution and a new configuration to what you do today. You, in a single general ledger company structure, you've worked through a lot of, you've made the best of that configuration, but there's a fair amount of workarounds. So we're going to walk through how that might look in a new environment. Okay? So we start with our general ledger and having our project ledger in place. So now we can start to produce journal entries, invoices, requisitions, purchase orders. Jackie's going to hire a mid-level provider to help run that place, and we're going to have some fun. Sound good? So keep that in mind as to why you're going to see us coming in and out and shifting gears. We're flowing data from setup to processing to reporting. We're going to be capitalizing that project. What else are we going to do? We're going to go to the general ledger.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who's ready to see some software?
Yeah. This, by the way, is the only PowerPoint I have.
Yeah.
So off it goes. And there's Craig. Hey, Craig. I'm going to start here. This is not the general ledger. This is a role of a project accountant. And why I want to start here is because it's a really cool looking homepage, don't you think? And why it's cool is because I've been living here. We're doing the same. I'm doing project and grant management down the road at Denver Health. So I've spent a lot of time on this particular homepage, and so it's become, you know, I guess you go where your comfort zone is. So here I am, and each one of those is links. And in the role of project accountants, I can access all the things that I need to do in that role. I can do journal entries. I can do budgets. I can create project invoices and so forth. So every Infor is role-based, and I can be in more than one role as an employee. I can be the project accountant, but I might have another role as a receivables specialist if I'm also someone who applies cash payments to the invoices that I've created.
But essentially, when we talk about role-based navigation, it means you tie a role or maybe multiple roles to an individual employee. And when that employee logs into CloudSuite, they come directly to the homepage that's relevant for their business.
So the other thing we want to cover is what's new, what we think it's important for you to know is new that might change how you view the future compared to what you know today. We all know a great deal about how you're currently configured because we helped do it in many cases, or we helped reconfigure it in some cases. So we kept that in mind too as we're putting things together. Okay? And we also know we have a pretty limited timeline, so I got to get to it.
Yep.
All right, so I have another window open, and I'm just now in the role of controller. And controller just is how you have certain access to certain feature functionality within the system. The main thing I want to talk about, because it's so significantly different than what you have today, is the financial enterprise group. So today you have GL10, your company record. And your company record is where you decide what your basic processing rules are and what your accounting unit structure is going to be, you know, the breadth and width of that structure. Financial enterprise group sits above all of this, and it is a radical change to what you're used to doing, and all for the better. It allows you to establish rules for all companies, but probably most importantly, it establishes what you want your accounting string to be, or what Infor is using the terms dimensions. Okay? Let's walk through this. They deliver user-defined dimensions and then Infor-defined dimensions. So entity, what we basically did was we came up with a structure that we thought would be most comfortable if we were using the system, and probably similar to you. So it's not super different than how you did it, but it is significant in a couple ways. Instead of entity, we just like the term company. So I'm defining my accounting string when I say when I go and do a transaction, wherever that transaction is, I'm going to see the term company instead of entity. Okay? If you don't like it, change it. Account, project, instead of activity. So no more activity. Now we're trying to use the word activity for what it really is defined in Webster's. Okay? It's an act, it's a function. Department. Now you'll notice we didn't use this accounting unit field. It's blank, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But I didn't want to call my accounting unit an accounting unit anymore. I think of it as a department, and I like that term better because, you know, cost center isn't always a cost center, right? That rule breaks as soon as you post revenue to it. So that didn't work in my head. So I said, I just like the term department. Is everybody okay with that? He can't hear you on the phone.
Yes.
Yes, Sergeant.
Okay. Funding is a dimension that is required by the system if I want to do project ledger invoicing. So it's kind of a under the hoods, behind the scenes requirement, and it helps drive the ability to create invoices out to the State of Colorado Department of Public Health, or if it's an internal funding source that you'll see this afternoon. I can choose the order in which I want to see that string of dimensions or fields. We like kind of the traditional, I'm used to saying company, accounting unit, account, activity, account category. That in my brain makes sense. So I did something similar here. It's company, it's department, it's account, it's project, and you'll notice there's no account category here. Account category is optional, and it's optional because in so many cases, at least in my personal experience, what we did was replicate as an account category exactly what the GL account is. And that didn't really make sense, nor is it necessary. Okay? Where it comes into play is that where you don't have that kind of one-to-one relationship, and you need to view your project expenses differently. In my example, though, I didn't need to do that. So I just took, that's one less part of my string. So in your current world, that fourth A, right, accounting unit account, activity account category, I'm down to 3 because I don't need that fourth one. Does that make sense? So where that comes into play a little bit is if you say, well, what about a capital project where, you know, it's a balance sheet transaction. It's always going back to my CIP account. So how do I break that up for budget purposes? So I just use sub-accounts. Okay? And in my case, just for demo purposes, I created 2. You could have as many as you need because at some point you may want to have a line item budget on your project. And you might want to align that with how you plan to interface and capitalize those expenses. Okay? So does that make sense? Those are the right people. They're shaking their head. All right.
If I could just jump in with
Please.
a quick summary, why this is exciting to me. The GL in CloudSuite is extremely flexible. There's a lot we can do with it. Of course, moving from Lawson gives you that unique opportunity to take what you like about Lawson GL and move it forward, and then change what you don't like, or add or enhance what you wish it always had. And the great thing about this is the CloudSuite GL adopts the language and terminology of your organization, and we'll see that throughout the solution. What's an accounting unit? That's some phrase only Lawson people know, right? It doesn't mean anything outside of Lawson. So why should you have to train yourself to use that term? In CloudSuite, we name what our financial dimensions are, and then the user interface throughout the whole rest of the application will be labeled with the names that you've chosen that make sense for your organization. You don't have to train thousands of staff on what are these obscure terms anymore, because the system will adapt to you, not the other way around.
Thank you. So these user-defined dimensions, you'll see one that's called ACT. I confess it originally said physician, and then I got on a call with Kyle and I said, I don't want to have that conversation. But we've already had that conversation this morning. So what that would allow, I relabeled it provider, and then I said, I'm just going to give up on that because I don't have anything built behind it to show you. But basically, it goes to what Michael Scott was talking about in terms of total costing. So if you wanted to track expenses by provider, right, because they can be mid-level or they can be surgeons and physicians, so I like the more generic term there, you would make that part of your string. And then you could build structures and reporting criteria around it and identify expenses directly to that provider. Just as he explained through the costing tool he was showing, okay? A couple other things. You're not limited to a 6-digit account field, a 4-digit sub-account field, or a 10-digit string. You can make it whatever you need it to make. You can also impose rules that say, I don't want to allow any account to start with the number 0, because that really screws up anytime I throw it into a CSV file or something, right? So you can pose a number of criteria around what those numbers or values can be. So you've got a lot more flexibility than you had before. It's going to be real fun for us consultants who go into every entity now, and every string is different. So, you know, that's my problem, not yours. All right, some of the other features.
Calendar and hierarchies.
Yeah, but before I get there, I know there was mention of balancing, zone balancing. Yes, of course, we can zone balance, we can intercompany balance, works similar to how you see it today, okay? So I didn't really want to spend a lot of time on something. I wanted to spend time on the fun stuff, frankly, if that's okay with you. You know, the accountants in the room want to know balance sheet, income statement, trial balance. Are those available? Of course they're available. So I'm not going to focus on those, okay? I'm going to show you the fun stuff. So mark that off your scorecard that I covered it, and I covered it well. So calendar. You can have as many calendars as you need. Right. You're on a fiscal year, a calendar fiscal year, right? You are?
Yes.
Okay. If you weren't, you would probably want one for a calendar and one for your fiscal year, and you know, and maybe some other type of period. And you can run your reports based on whatever calendar that you need to report on. What else do I want to say? System controls, subsystem controls. As you know them today, very similar today. One really slick new feature is, however, when you're running your subsystem interfaces to the general ledger, AP 175, PO 130, I'm drawing a blank on the others. Today, it comes in a release status, and then you have to run your posting job. Okay, you can still do that in the future, but you know you can't change that entry anyway. So you have the option now. Just go ahead and post it as soon as it interfaces, and be done with it. Okay, because if it's wrong, you need to change it in the subsystem and re-interface it anyway. Right? That's really the right way to do it. Even though you know we're all guilty of saying I just need to do a GL entry on the fly and get done. Right? Let's look at this. Accounts, we have a master list, and then we organize them in however chart of structure that we need. So one thing I was thinking about last night is when I've been here before, we've talked about how Foundation has just a different reporting structure, kind of a different chart, right? It doesn't really adhere to your hospital-based chart of accounts, or at least They would prefer it to be different. So now you can do that. You can organize, chart your accounts in a structure that meets their needs, meets your needs, and then you can have one that consolidates them together. So much more flexibility within your system to get to those answers. Does that make sense? Was I fairly right about that foundation piece? Okay. Let's look at department, because department is akin to what you call today your accounting unit structure. So the concept is we have a default or a master, Infor calls it an enterprise structure, where all departments have to reside, okay? But each one of those posting departments can reside in any number of reporting structures that you need in addition to that main one. So that gives you more flexibility, gives you, it lessens the need, I guess, to say, I just remember spending hours and days on what we wanted our accounting unit structure to be. And it was stressful. And because if it wasn't quite right, it was a real pain to do reorganizations once you have transactions going, right? That's a true statement in the real world, right? That is so much different and so much easier to do here. There's no more variable level addressing. There's no more running batch jobs and probably have to do that on a Sunday morning when no one's around, kind of thing. Let's take a look. And as the upload tab indicates, I can upload this through Spreadsheet Designer, all right, which is a much slicker tool than the add-ins featured today. Biggest things to think about there is you can query it. It's just selecting the fields you want. No more mapping like you all used to do, and then you sometimes share that little mapping template or not. So it lands into your spreadsheet, and then you can make changes and push it right back up because the system knows where to land it. All right, you don't have to have like a query that looks at a database table or tables, and then a different one to push it up where you're mapping to an individual form. You know what I'm talking about, right? And we do. Thank you. So this is my current structure. Nothing magical about this. I just said, these are all my departments. I have collected them in terms of administrative departments and service line departments. So I already had emergency services out there, so now I have urgent care services as well. Okay. And if I needed to move this, it's a matter of just saying, where do you want to go with it? I'll just throw it here under emergency for a moment. Oh my, why'd I do that? Okay, there it is. That's my whole restructuring of an accounting unit, as you would call it today. I had to show that because that gets me excited, because that is an absolutely dreadful experience. It's even more dreadful if you have to do an activity reorganization. If you've ever had to do that, it gets even worse if you've already if you use the billing module and you've already created invoices. That's just it's just not anything you ever want to do. So can you appreciate how much easier it is? So that's my main structure. Oh, and you can now hit the back button without fear. You know what I'm talking about. I wish I hadn't done that. It's okay to do it here. We wanted you to do it here. Okay. So then we have another, and someone else built that for me, a tax reporting structure, but I can have one by, what's a common one? Person responsible, right? VPs. What departments am I responsible for? And that changes constantly, right? So that is a very easy one to manage now, because as VPs come and go or responsibilities shift, it's just moving things around, you know. Event, just an FYI, source code is what you would call that today. It's now called event. It behaves exactly the same way. You look at a transaction, system code tells me where it came from, source code tells me more about what that is or represents. Ledger, this is big, so don't stop me talking. So we have a core ledger or a default ledger where all our transactions reside. But we now have the ability to have multiple ledgers. So for example, I want to have my eliminations sitting in a different ledger. I want to have my year-end adjustments sitting in a different ledger. And then I can pick and choose when I run my financial statements whether to include those or not. Okay? So that's a biggie. We don't here do that we don't do a 13-month period, which is often one in other areas used for adjustments, but that's kind of what they're getting to, at least my take on that. And of course, you know, we always had a structure within either your company for eliminations, or we had a separate company for eliminations, so we don't have to deal with that any longer. We just throw those like transactions into a different ledger. Make sense? Structure relations, I don't really have anything to show you except to offer that this is where we, so think GL20 for a minute, and how I decide what accounts can be used with that accounting unit. We build rules in the structure relation module that automate and make that dynamic. So that's just kind of the new version of that. So those of you who work with the AC module a lot, this is your ACO7 or account assignment. It's where I'm building the rules to say what departments and accounts are allowed to be used with this particular project. Okay? Make sense?
It is truly rule, or you could say policy-based now, rather than a manual point-to-point connection or some broad rule. So you can set up a rule that says just a certain range of accounts require a project attached to them, or what have you. There's a really extensible set of rules or policies that can be configured to both prevent any errors in GL transactions, but also like make it super easy to maintain. So if you add, say, a new account, you don't have to then go in and start assigning that account to different departments or what have you, because you've added that account within a certain range or grouping that your policy is already configured for.
Budgets. So today, you do your budget in a third-party system and you import it just for reporting purposes. We have that same functionality if you choose to stay with that approach. So the current loss and term is the FB 165, our budget load. We do that same feature in here in the budget module, but what is different is we now have only one budget module for both GL and project ledger. So a project budget is built in the same place. So that's just consolidating that effort is once again another step to simplify. And probably one of the biggest things related to that I have already forgotten is there's no more GL trans and AC trans. There's one transaction table. So no more reconciliation issues between the two ledgers. It's really just one ledger. Okay. I am so happy I said that. Mike!
Can I ask a question about that?
You may.
You're right. Build a detailed transaction, quote-unquote budget, a third-party system, and then kind of just load balances. What if we didn't want to do that? not have to import it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm not sure I can answer that question thoroughly, because you're asking for the actual modeling of that amount, right? And it's like, now you've done it, let's
Can I
load it.
integrate my budget
Yeah.
in with this?
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to say yes and point to the Infor guys.
Or the finance breakout later today.
Or we can certainly put it on our parking lot list.
So Brad and
Yeah.
I talked about it a little bit before in preparation, and it's going to be covered next week. I think when you guys do a deeper dive on the 12th, so I think it's the 12th.
So that they follow up. on it.
Yeah, follow up next week. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that the purpose for the parking lot is to throw stuff like that out there. So what is it?
Integrated budget.
Integrated budget.
Yeah, and budget development, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yep. All right.
So Bob, I have a question. I hear you throwing out like FP 165 and GL 10, and I think for a lot of people in the room, they're really familiar with that, but maybe a new hire, they still need to know.
Not here. Thank you. It's all role-based, it's all process-driven. So recall, I brought you first to the project accountant homepage. I said, all right, we just hired you as the project accountant. This is all the stuff you need to go. This is the only place you need to go. When you're lost, go home. You know, it explains everything in the right order and the right process and how you want to do that. All right, I may regret what I'm doing here, but I don't think so.
So that's just another chart field. The department still has the aggregate information. The provider is kind of a level down, so that the revenue and whatever direct costs we know about that provider would be associated with that.
It's part of your accounting string, so it's now company and department and account and maybe a project and maybe a provider number on that. So yeah, I could not. I renamed the field, but I didn't. There's nothing behind that, right? I'd still have to build out my provider names, numbers, however you want to do that, and throw together at least a simple enterprise structure that represents that. Maybe it's by department, maybe it's by specialty. You know, how do you all view them? Do you look at them differently than that?
We don't. I mean, we look at them by specialty, we look at them by clinic, we look at them by, mapping to various things. So we'd have to determine how we want to
Yeah.
look at them.
In the design, you want to know, do you want a group of cardiologists, that kind of thing.
And going back to what I had said before about how we spent a great deal of time planning our accounting unit structure because it had some consequences if we didn't get it quite right. It was just harder to change things around. So here, just to use that provider for example, you could make a really simple here's just a list, summary level provider, list. And that's it. And then later, as you figure out how you want to organize it, you just revise, because what are you doing? You might now say, maybe I do want to look at it by service line, or maybe I want to split surgeons and physicians and mid-level providers. So I just come in and add summary levels to better categorize those events. And of course, that's just so you can enable ease of reporting. All right. We're doing on time here.
We could probably.
Yeah. Let's do a journal entry. I'm going to show you two ways. Okay. I'm just going to show you how to do it on the page, or what you would do on GL40, and then I'll do it through the spreadsheet designer upload. All right. And part of this, for doing this, is obviously to show you what it looks like and just how you generally navigate within the system. But we have journal entry approval in place here. So I'm going to be able to submit my journal entry for approval, and we'll be able to have, what's her name, Susan Glick?
Yeah, she's going to approve it. One of the really exciting things for us about the CloudSuite platform is there's native request and approval capability built right into the platform. So, as business consultants, for any kind of transaction or data element in the system, we have the ability to create an approval process or even a request and approval process. That's a pretty big difference for us from Lawson.
Quick question, how do you determine the approval authority of the next step? Do you use the role-based security type of things to get the next step approval?
Yeah, that's a great question. So how do we determine who is the right approver, right? And how does that work through, possibly a chain of approvers? We have a lot of different options. There is some for a simple scenario. There are some screens, right sort of within the application setup where you can build out some real basic rules. But for a more advanced approval scenario, we can use IPA, Infor Process Automation. That's the same workflow tool that you guys have in place today with Lawson that powers your Lawson approvals. And then as far as where does it get that information from, we have all of the options available to you that you have today with Lawson in terms of connecting to different systems or pulling that data from the CloudSuite application. But one of the really great things about having a fully integrated CloudSuite HCM and CloudSuite Financial Supply Management is we can leverage this flexible organizational structure that we see in HCM. So we can actually use HCM to drive an approval process, even if the supervisor structure doesn't necessarily align. But today we're going to show a very simple example. So we won't dig into all that, but it is super flex and as far as how deep you want to go.
So a few things as I go along. So I'm still in the role of controller. So if you see down the side of the screen are all the things that I have access to. So I have the ability to set up certain things and then to run processes, obviously to create journal entries. You'll notice I can also manage vendors because I have the authority to do that, and manage AR customers as well. This is, you don't have to keep staring at that screen though if you want. All I did was click on the bars and I can increase my landing space. Let's do that for a second, just maybe it's a better view. And then now that I'm here, I can create. I can see anything that's pending an approval. I can see anything that's released, posted, anything I've deleted. So what is a little different in terms of how I correct a journal entry. Today you have in Lawson the ability to back out. I can't recall if you have that rule in place, but you do have that ability. Going forward, we're only going to copy and reverse. So we're going to retain that audit trail. Okay.
So we won't be deleting entries in the future.
Right. Now what I did when you saw the delete was I had an unreleased, right? And just like today, anything that's in an unreleased status, I can do anything still I want to, including delete it. And that's what I did just because I wanted to kind of clear some clutter away. Yeah.
Can you unrelease a released entry that has not been posted?
No.
Once you release
You can have your approver reject it.
Okay.
And if I'm wrong about that, we'll clarify that in the breakout session. Where was I?
You're going to enter in a quick journal entry. We'll show online entry, and then we'll also show the spreadsheet integration.
I did, and I know I'm just trying to build anticipation, so bear with me for a second. What I wanted to, before I got there, was to say, oh, and what are all these bars up here? These are they're filters, okay? And if I really don't need to see certain fields, I can customize my view, okay? Let's say I don't need to see that primary ledger, for example. And I don't know what else I don't need to see. Journal type, just, okay? And then, you know, it's the same data. It's just I get to look at it a little bit differently than how Mike looks at it, for example. Okay?
Yeah. You'll see this throughout the application are list views. So the paradigm of accessing information here is the system will generally bring you to a list of data and then let you navigate into an individual transaction, and oftentimes we'll see these tabs along the top that'll allow me to quickly flip through different categories. Say we're in the list of journal entries, but you see we're on the unreleased tab now. You can flip over to the pending approval or the released or what have you, and it'll show you that appropriate list. And then everything you see along the top is a filter. You can just quickly type in to filter down that list. You can remove columns. You can also add new columns. It's very easy to go in and work through the list of available columns and add that. So this isn't just that. This sort of navigational feature isn't just journal entries. It's basically the way that you interact with CloudSuite now. Gone are the days of navigating to a blank form and then having to figure out what you're trying to do. The system is sort of set to be a bit more intuitive and in tune with the way that real people work.
Yeah, it's pretty.
I make those decisions every time I go in, like where Bob took out a couple of fields. And tomorrow when I come in, if I don't like those, do I go in and customize it again, or does it remember the way I've customized it?
It's going to save what you did the previous day. So if you did want to change it, obviously you're going to have to go and revise it to your liking. But once it's in place, you're not being asked to do it every single time you log in.
Yeah, but personalizations will stick with the user. I don't want to go on a big tangent, but you still have some pretty strong enterprise control over all this stuff too. So the IT group has visibility and can manage what's going on. So if you forget what you did and then you call for help and you're like, this isn't working, IT knows what you did, and they can back it out for you.
All right, let's take a look. So I'm just going to create, and it's a similar concept to your current GL40 in that I need to build a header first before I can build my lines. Okay, so post date. I'm doing everything in June, so I'm just going to use that, and I'm going to transfer an expense. Thank you. Asterisks are telling me required fields. Richard helped me remember that just now. But if he weren't here, the system would have said, you got to give me a company number. Okay. If it's today, I can still type today, just like you can. I'm going to enter an approval code. So we just have one level at the moment. And I think I set it for $1,000. So I'm going to just add. And now my header's built. I'll come in and add transactions. And functionally, I would say you're rarely going to do this. Maybe a two-liner, you just come in here because it's faster, but you're probably going to do things through a spreadsheet upload like you do today. Daniel, on my script, what did I say, $1,000?
$975.
$970. Do I want $975?
Well, it doesn't have to be 975.
Let's make it $1975.
There you go.
I can change the description on the line. I am not going to, but this time I'm going to save, and I'm going to. I didn't put anything in there. I'm sorry. What were my?
So you have 1010.
Oh yeah. Or I could type it or select it just like the 1010. It's.
And the account is 690,020.
Like that. And oh, look, by the way, folks, doesn't say act anymore, it says provider on my accounting stream. Okay. There we go, and now it saved that first line, brought me back. What's my other department, please?
1001.
Oh, of course. And it's 690020.
Correct.
Okay. I swear I'm idiot savant. There's no reason why I should have had to remember that number, and it was just like there. So don't leave your social security number nearby. All right, I'm going to come back to the header, and just for argument's sake, you can see my lines. They're in an unreleased status. I'm going to hit my totals just to make sure my debits and credits match. All right, it's not going to release if they're out of balance, and it told me up front on the header if I'm out of balance, but I wanted to do it just the same. Let's add a comment. Right. There's our comment. And related documents. So if you want to forward or associate the source document, the spreadsheet, maybe the analysis, whatever you did to come up with your values, you can do that quite easily. I'm just going to grab one here. All right, there it is. Up in actions, I can just say delete, release. And what we should see, if I remembered my approval threshold correctly, it should be pending approval. Okay. Yep, that's the one, right? Now, I have Susan over here. Might need to refresh Susan here. Here we go. So Susan is also a requesting approver, or requisition approver, excuse me. Here we go. And of course, you can do this on a phone or a tablet. I just head it up.
We'll show that. We'll show that a little bit later.
Okay. So it's approved, and it should be sitting here under my released now. Where'd it go? What did I say? Number 17? I should have paid attention to that. Here it is. Sorry. Okay. And I can release it. Oh, I guess it didn't approve. Let me see.
Just do the manual.
Yep.
Maybe it went. Maybe there's a reason it was 975.
Yeah. It's giving me grief. All right.
Yeah. That's fine. You want to take a look at the? Should
Yep.
we take a look at the spreadsheets?
Yeah, let's do that.
That's the more exciting part, anyway.
Okay. I'll circle back on that. All right, so this is a spreadsheet designer, and I've already built a query where I'm going to upload the header and the lines, and the system is smart enough to create the header and then associate the lines with that header in one step. So. Uh-oh. Keith Whalen better not leave his social security number around either. I've signed in so many times as him. And it already built the header, and it's moved on and it's loading the transaction lines.
So will this line item journal entry load and show up and look like a journal entry like a GL40 normally would?
It will.
Instead of a 165?
Yeah, it will. We're going to look at that. However, since you mentioned GL165, there is a version of that as well. You know, so
I
you're
usually
going to.
associate those with like big interfaces like
Yep.
that big.
Yep.
And journal entries with 40s, but we load them both the same way right now.
Okay. So this is your 40.
Okay.
Yep.
And it again, I don't know what the new language is, but it looks like a journal entry, not an interface.
That it looks like a journal entry. That's right. Yeah.
So if I wanted to see how many actual manual journal entries I'm making a month, I can actually isolate that from the big interfaces and see them.
Yep. So this is kind of your equivalent of what you see today as, you know, add, complete, continue. So a nice pretty green bar, if it was red, it would tell me what that error was. Okay? But it loaded, and it not only loaded, but it assigned a journal number to both of those. In my example, I'm doing two journal entries, actually. I'm doing it to company 10 and to company 20. And then likewise.
So created the intercompanies as well when it did that.
Yep. And likewise there again. And I just used a formula to say pull in my my journal number, so I can do that all in one step. Someone smarter than me came up with a third tab to actually release it. So it did everything from creation to release. So lots of flexibility there. So let's see, what did we're looking for? Journal, let's go look at journal 18.
What I like about Spreadsheet Designer is uploading and downloading is connected. It's all one functionality, which is sort of the opposite of the old Excel-based tools for Lawson. And the cool thing you can do is you can set up a query, and it'll pull a set of data, and then you can change that data right within your spreadsheet and then just hit upload. You don't have to like remap everything back again because it did the query. The tool remembers what the columns are and what the data is, so I can send it right back into CloudSuite without a lot of column gymnastics.
So Richard, is this part of the core product now versus separately licensed like it has been in the past?
Core product, right?
The
Right.
Yeah, core
spreadsheet
product.
design.
Yeah, they really simplified the licensing with the SaaS solution, and all this platform stuff you get as it's no longer this is really exciting for us. So as consultants, we no longer have to ask you a litany of questions. Oh, do you guys have process flow? Oh, do you guys have LBI licenses to support this? Right, like the whole iOS platform is available to every employee. So we can build cool stuff and not bump into a lot of licensing issues.
Great, thank you.
What was the intercompany?
I didn't set that up. It would have, though.
So I know we're almost out of time for journal entry to move over to requisitions. Are you almost?
I am.
Okay.
I am. Okay. So there it is. I think the only other thing I thought I would show is my reports. And think of these as, let's look at account analysis. Here we go. I've done a lot in CIP, so let's just take a look at that. Think of this as your modern version of GL95 or AC90. No, AC95. where those are hyperlinks, so I can see posted expenses, encumbrances, and commitments. So today we use in Lawson the term commitment. Commitment means everything. Going forward, commitment is basically a requisition, encumbrance is everything else. So I'm not sure if that matters down the road, but they have decided to distinguish those two terms. And if I want to see what makes up that 77 grand, I just click on it, and there you go. All right. So that's it for me until you see me again.
Until right after. So the idea here is we're going to do some supply. We're going to do some supply chain, life cycle type transactions to support our urgent care build out, and then Bob's going to come back and basically we'll see the impact back on finance.
Yep.
After those transactions.
Will there be a little more substance about reporting to show how the reporting works?
Yeah, now Aaron's going to work a little bit on that. More of it, analytics, but yes.
Because I know you kind of waved at it a little bit earlier, but kind of like to see how it would work.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Okay. So do we need?
All right. So in keeping with the storyline, now we have our urgent care facility, and now we got to spend some money, right? We gotta add some, get some items in there, and we're gonna do some requesting. We're gonna show mobile approvals, and then changing those into a purchase order, and then the receiving piece of that, and then we'll go into the matching side. So I logged in right now as a requester. And right as you come in as a requester, you see this brand new landing page. There's all the information you would need as a requester right here at your fingertips. If you expand it to see some of your other options as a requester, there's some helpful options on the side. You can see your requisition statuses. So if you click on your requisition statuses, it's going to give you a graphical representation of your processed and unreleased or needs approval requisitions. So it's pretty helpful to see. You can see all the requisitions that are out there and their status in a list view. And then we're going to go into requisition self-service to actually request an item. So we go to requisition self-service.
And a typical navigation would be a requester would have a direct link into RSS and use that. That's the new RGC. They went back. Remember what was RSS?
Yeah, some of it.
Yeah, we're back to RSS. So the requester would typically navigate in through a direct link to RSS, which is a scaled down, very efficient view. But of course, what Dan was just showing was the regular CloudSuite interface that a requester will also have access to that has a bit more functionality.
So can they only see their own, or can they see everybody's within their department?
You could have it set up to do either or. So you could see your own. It might be a security feature, or you could just see your own as a requester. Like today, you probably have conditional security rules around that. You could set up similar security today. Okay. So the requisition self-service has this nice home screen where you can see your recent requisitions, your recently requested items, any recently requested special or services. If you're utilizing Punch-Out, you see your available Punch-Out vendors down here, and any shopping list that you have access to, you'll be able to see right here in this top right corner.
Do all of the items have pictures related to what they are?
So you can set that up today. You no longer need a separate server to add the links and then link them back. Anyone that has the access to within FSM could go out and find an image and upload it to the item master, and that will flow out to anywhere where that item exists.
Yeah. In fact, this nice little image iconography for different items. Also, we have that on requesting locations. We have that on anytime you see vendor logos. Anytime there's a person that's involved in a transaction, we'll usually see like a profile pic. And all of that data is managed in the same way that master data is managed. So your vendor administrator is the one who would typically manage the vendor logos. It's not on the side. It's not a bolt-on. It's not an IT thing. It's just right within the application.
So we're gonna search for a new bed. So we're gonna type in bed and see what comes up in our search catalog. So we see we have a couple options here, and notice these little icons down below. These icons indicate some important information about the item. So where you see these star icons, it means that item is on contract. So you're going to be certain you're getting the best price or the negotiated price for that item. And if you hover over it, you'll see what item or what contract number that item is on. There's this other logo that looks like a little bit of a factory, and if you hover over that, it's going to show you the manufacturer details associated to that item as well. So sort of similar today, you can update right on the screen how many you want of the item and just add it to your request. So we're going to click add. We're going to get 5 of these beds. If you click on the item details itself, it actually shows you, a bigger image of the item and some other details as well. Go back. We're going to add 5 of these to our requisition by just clicking add to request. If you have any unreleased requisitions out there today, it will say you have some unreleased requisitions. Do you want to add this to an existing requisition, or do you want to create a new one? So we'll create a new one for this example. And now we'll see it added into our shopping cart here. Because this is for a project, we want to add some details to the accounting distribution. So we're going to click on View Request Details. And we get a list view of all the items that will be on your requisition. If you have any you want to add notes, you can add them here. And if you want to update the distributions, you click on the little icon, and it's going to launch a new page to update those distributions. So we see down below, here's our distribution string. So we're going to use company 10, the department 999. Company 10, department 999.
4
No.
lines.
Yes. And then we're going to search for our account. So 1, 2. And we're going to use the equipment account.
And you're only doing this if you need to get beyond the account.
Right, if
an
it's-
account as we call it today.
Exactly. So this will default
Only
in. We're just
reflect it,
changing it
right.
just to show you how to.
It's perfect, I just want to make sure.
Yes. And then for our project code, we are going to use our new project for the urgent care site.
Yeah, so Department 1001 was our urgent care facility that's associated with their requesting location. But because we're going to capitalize this purchase, we're changing our department to the balance sheet, which is 999.
And a lot of times, so for this, we're going to add to an asset template. A lot of times, the requester might not know what asset template to use. So we're going to leave this one blank, and we're going to add it later on at the buyer level. So we're going
You also attach a document to the line, so like you got a quote.
Yes. So I just saved this, so I will update. I'll close this window to take me back into requisition self-service. And if you add a line note or a note at the header, you have the ability to add an attachment. So you type in the title, any comments, and then you could attach a file directly to a line or to the header level of the requisition as well. This looks good. We're going to hit submit. and it's going to make sure we want to submit it. We're going to hit yes, and then it said it's been submitted. Return to the dashboard. So it brings us back to the dashboard, and it says our requisition is now in a status of needs approval. So one quick thing before we head into the mobile approval piece is there's no more RQC config XML file. So if you're ordering a special or a service and you have all these fields, this is all controlled now. You can control at the individual requester level what they see, what's required, or what's shown or what's hidden, and at the location and the company level as well. So there's the hierarchy there that you can control who sees what specific fields on the requisition. And you don't have to reboot anything after, it just goes into effect.
Yeah. We also have, just at a platform level, we have a really rich capability around configuring the system globally. So, for example, San Gabriel Valley is one of our CloudSuite financial and supply implementations that we have going on. They're a water district, so we globally configured out all the healthcare specific fields within their application, so their employees have less visual clutter on the screen.
Okay. Do you want to show? We want to go into the mobile. All right.
Yeah. So we were going to do a cool thing where we mirrored the iPad to the screens, but the network isn't cooperating with that. So maybe Aaron, you can just show in the room, and if you want, you don't happen to have that Gmail. You want to just sign into that Gmail real quick, and then we can see also what it was.
It's probably, it might log me into mine.
Yeah, you want to switch. So in the far right, where it says D, click on that. And
is it going to sign me out of the meeting now?
Okay, never mind. It's too much trouble. Don't worry about it. Oh, yeah, well,
yeah.
Here. So here on the pad, we're going to do approval by email today, but we can also access RSS through the iPad. We can access the online approvals through the iPad as well. Of course, the great thing about CloudSuite is it's available universally, so we don't have a lot of infrastructural hoops to jump through. That makes it very friendly on mobile devices. We've set up rec approval to give us some information about the requisition right in our email. This is very configurable. We can really go pretty far with making a thorough notification that gives all the information about the requisition that an approver might want to see, and allow them to make an approval decision right from here. And then I should use Safari here, I think, right? There we go. And then it's just asking to sign in to verify who I am, because in case I say forwarded the email to someone else, right? Do you have that? You can
I have to present again. Sorry.
It's the. Oh yeah, it's okay. Never mind. It's all right. I'll just type it in real quick. Sorry.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So you can move on, and I'll close out that.
Okay.
That rec approval.
Yeah, so you now get a approval notification on a device, and you can enhance the out-of-the-box flow to actually show some of the requisition details as well. So you can see the lines on that requisition.
Here, sorry. Keep going.
So you're not blind approving the
There,
requisition.
but it needs your thumb. There you go. Now you can just say it's on. Does it work? Yeah. Great. Okay. Thanks.
So has that been approved? Okay, so now our requisition number 85 has changed status from needs approval to processed. Alright, so the next piece out is going to go. We're going to change hats and become a buyer. So I'm going to sign out here as a buyer, or as a requester, and log in as our buyer.
we'll cycle back.
So now I'm logging in with our buyer. And again, we have that nice landing page to see important details that are pertinent to that specific buyer. And if we open this up, we have some other options as well. So we're going to go into Manage Purchase Requests. So Manage Purchase Requests is your new PO23. It's a PO23 on steroids, basically. It makes it a little bit easier to find your items. You have some filter functionality. You could sort by vendor or by buyer, and you could filter all of those, all that criteria as well. So you're only looking at what details are specific and important to you, the individual buyer. So we're going to, we could change the size of the page too. So there's no more, five lines and scrolling next, and selecting. We could update this records per page to be 1,000 if you really want to. It takes a second for that to load back up, but you could adjust that. And as you're going through these, you could select multiples as well by clicking the line and holding Control, or you could use the Shift key, similar to Excel functions today. So our last requisition was 85. We're going to focus on that, but you're going to notice these little badge icons on here as well. I'll try to make this a little bit bigger. So these badge icons, if you hover over them, they're going to show you some additional details about that line. So if it's a special or a service, that will say this request is for a special or service item. The vendor, it only shows you the vendor number, but if you hover over, it shows you the vendor name. So it's McKesson. We ordered these beds from McKesson. Same thing with the buyer. Your buyer ID is now going to be the employee number. So if you hover over that, it'll show you the specific buyer. Out to the right on the requested delivery date, if you hover over that, it'll give you a warning, if it's a day old or if it's coming up on a day old. So anything that's red means it's been out there for a little while. Anything that has this, the yield sign is just saying it's a day old. Let's not forget about it, kind of thing. So to change this or to select this for a purchase order, we just click that item and then click Select for Purchase Order. And then it puts our buyer name next to that line. So if we had multiple lines, it will populate that buyer name as well. When we're ready to add this to a purchase order, all we have to do is click Add to Purchase Order. Oh, I'm sorry. So if the purchase order already exists, you could add it to an existing unreleased purchase order, but we're going to create the purchase order. So this is going to be a new purchase order. And it's going to give us a couple more header level fields. If I had selected additional lines that were from multiple vendors or different buyers, if I was covering for a buyer, whatever I enter into this create purchase order screen will overwrite what's on the line itself. So the only required field here is the company and the early delivery date. And it should default in if you only selected your own buyer records, that should default in. And if I want to change the vendor, I could change that as well from here. And I'm just going to hit OK. All right.
What's our PO number? 101-000-48?
Yes. All right. So then that little message said your purchase order is being created. Refresh the screen to update. So I click the refresh button, and the line at the bottom will disappear. So that's gone. Now, if there's any information missing, like vendor or buyer, how it would typically show up into your PO23 bucket after PO100 runs today. There is a job similar to PO100 today that anything that is not that has all the information needed, you could run that process and it will populate all your unreleased purchase orders
Okay, so
as
there's
well.
still a mass generation.
Absolutely, yes. Okay, so we've created our purchase order. Now it just bumps over to the next tab on purchase orders. And we see right at the top. So anytime you see like the hand over a field, it's not just like your regular mouse pointer. You should be able to sort by ascending or descending order to get the most recent first or the most outstanding up top. So I'm going to click on our purchase order to open it up to see some more details. So this is now our new PO20 screen. And very similar header details, all the line details, the item type, quantity, unit of measure, unit cost, and the status. But we want to add this now to an asset template. So to get to that level, we'll open up the line. And we're going to go down to the distributions tab on the left-hand side. So the great thing about this is now there's no like .1, .2, .3, .4 screens. All those extra screens are on the left-hand side as tabs now. So you can navigate right from a single place. So this is very similar line to what you saw on the requisition details. And here we're going to add our asset template. We're going to use the major movable 10-year life and save that line. So the line has been saved, and we could go back to see our header level details as well. I want to point one more thing out. There's the totals. It's pretty helpful. It just takes all the line totals for your purchase order and kind of summarizes it into an easy to read chart on the totals tab here. Right. Once we're ready to release, we're going to release the purchase order. We'll see our status update. Now I'm going to issue final here. If you want to check out the issue method, it's on the header details tab at the bottom. So we're just going to issue it as a paper. And what's cool about this is there's Infor Document Management, IDM. And if you have this set up, you can create really pretty purchase order documents and receiving documents and put away tickets, issue tickets. You could customize these yourself. So if you click on this link, it opens up the purchase order. So you could put your own logo. You get samples out of the box with the system, and you could pull in your own fields. So this is pretty much just a sample that we slapped a logo on. So it has all the purchase order details, the ship to address, the bill tos, the vendor, who ordered it, the delivered to details, and the contacts.
And we could do the same thing with delivery documents, you said, or pick tickets, or
Yes.
whatever piece of paper it prints out, we could.
Yep.
design
There's sample documents that come.
So, yeah.
Yes. CloudSuite,
Is that-
now with document
It
creation.
just eliminates MHC, right?
That's where I would go.
Well, depends if you use it for other, like check printing or
For this purpose.
for like pretty POs. Like you can make your own now.
But is this IDM integrated with the other, like the AR module and things like that? And MHC or
And
So-
Chuck, do we still need MHD for anything that we would use it for today? I think is the question. Chuck?
No, so this functionality we're seeing is relatively new, only in the past 2 years have they been adding this in. But by the time that your project starts, everything is every document that you need will have a template already, right within the system. There really isn't a need for
So we can use it for like this.
Exactly. All yes. All yeah.
That's our question.
You can do all that stuff, and then the delivery as well. Emailing to Sal, or the interface on the you mentioned 1099s, the Fire interface, all that stuff. CloudSuite, they've really made great strides to cover that functionality, and it is still relatively new. So, like we have, obviously, there's quite a life cycle here. We do have, we're projects that are more legacy, we have CloudSuite customers with MHC, but our new CloudSuite projects are starting with that.
So I do a time check because we're 10 minutes over. So.
Oops.
We could get to lunch. So is there one more thing you guys?
Yeah, there's one quick receiving piece, and then that's pretty simple. So we could do that in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Will we cover mobile products later, like for receiving, in our breakout meeting?
We could talk about it. I didn't have anything prepared for like the mobile receiving, but I know a lot about MSCM, and so we could chat about that, and we could.
What you guys know too, when we have next week on the 12th, I'm going to have the SCs available all day long for WebEx, depending on when it is, and we can cover that.
I would
on the
ask
12th.
them to show us the new, if the product's different than we have today, we will want to see
Okay.
it.
Absolutely.
So you have receiving from 12 to 1?
I think that there's something else with. Where is there with that? The receiving process is
Yeah,
pretty.
receiving is pretty straightforward. We're just gonna, so at any point we can cruise through receiving, and then on to invoicing, and then Bob will tell us about how this relates to our capital project build out. But yeah, that's it.
Okay. So do we want to do receiving super fast, or?
Why don't we take a break for lunch, and when we come back, we'll cover it.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so-
Right, yeah, we'll do
Yeah.
30 seconds on receiving.
Oh yeah, no, go ahead, do it now.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
All right. So we have that PO now. We're in as a receiver. We'll see any,
So this is their home page.
Yep.
Okay.
Got that.
Got
And
it.
we're just going to go into receive items. And we're going to hit create. You can see all the different ones that are out there already. So we're going to do company 10.
So this looks very familiar to receiving self-serve today that we use.
Yes, very, very similar.
48.
Yep. So we're going to select that and hit OK. And you notice now we have the contextual apps. So you can see on the right-hand side the whole requisition to invoice cycle. So right now we're going to be up to the receiving piece. So we see the source document. If there's multiple lines on the purchase order, there'll be a little drop down next to the PO line number, and you can change the line to now see the more details of that PO. And then once the receiver is released, it will update here, and then so on and so forth, invoicing and payment. All that detail will be right at your fingertips. Okay, so to update a line for receiving, you go into the received column and update how many you actually have, or you could utilize the receive all function if you allow that for your receivers. It just updates the received quantity to be the remaining quantity. So I'll hit receive all. If you have multiple locations that you're working with, you could filter them out. So I'll hit OK. Now we see that we had 5 remaining. We have received 5, and we could just hit release and print. And now our requisition is closed, and our purchase order has been received.
All right.
Just in time for launch.
No barcodes with this delivery document, right?
So that's through mobile supply chain management. If it's integrated, that will continue to print out your barcoded delivery documents there.
Only through handhelds, so not through this.
If you create that receiver, it should still integrate. Like today, if you have it set up, if you do a receipt on PO30, it should still print out that delivery document.
Let's have a conversation about
Yeah,
that.
we could talk about that.
We do have some questions about that in today's meeting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
If there's a package slip, is there a way to have that?
Yes. So like on the requisition, you could come into the comment section, add a comment, and then you could attach a scanned image of that packing slip.
And is Lawson doing OCR? Are they doing?
We got
receptive software.
right. So there are options.
I heard that a couple of years ago. Even.
Yeah. So Infor does have scanning and OCR capability at a license separately, and then we also often integrate CloudSuite with solutions such as ImageNow or Brainware, what you might already have.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so let's take a break. Let's come back at, I know we're getting close. I wanted to catch up on time if possible. Back at